Okay, just give me a minute. My screen is not shareable. Let me figure out how to solve that. Okay, now I can share my screen. First of all, wait. Okay, where did I start? I'm not able to remember. Okay. Okay, I remember. I covered the first reality. Okay. Yeah. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is explaining Dashamul, the 10 foundational teachings. I have noted it already. There are 10 topics. I already presented the summary of Dashamul in the Telegram group. You can have a look. The first point is Vedic scriptures constitute the proper source of valid knowledge regarding the ultimate nature of reality. And the Vedas come to 9 conclusions. The first conclusion was about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is referred to as the first reality. Prameya is the exact word. And this is the second reality or second teaching of the Vedas. According to the knowledge of Amnaya, Amnaya means Vedic knowledge as it is received through the discipline succession. That's called Amnaya. It's a word that Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses often. The second reality is considered as follows. The Supreme Lord Hari is naturally full of inconceivable potencies. To one of his potencies is manifested as indistinct Brahman. This is his impersonal potency. Again, through his unlimited potencies, including Brahman and Paramatma, he manifests his supremacy as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. Let me take out the original. This is 8. Okay, sit down. निश्चय Amnaya Duti Brahman Vichare. According to the knowledge of Amnaya, Vedic knowledge received through the disciplic succession, the second reality has been analyzed as follows. Say Parabrahma Shri Hari Swabhavik Achinti Shakti Vishishta. That Supreme Brahman Shri Hari is endowed with natural inconceivable potencies. Ekti Shakti Chalanai Tini Osputa Jnani Brahma Rupe Pratibhatahan. By the functioning of his potencies, he appears as the impersonal Brahman for those with vague awareness of him. When you have a vague realization of the Supreme Lord, then the Supreme Lord appears as the impersonal Brahman. Ihari Nam Tahar Nirvishesh Shakti Abar Ananta Shakti Chalnai Ini Brahma Paramatma Ki Odibhut Kuriya Nija Bhagavat Satta Prakash Kuren Ihar Nam Savishesh Shakti. This Brahman is manifested through his impersonal potency. By the functioning of his unlimited potencies, he manifests his existence as Bhagavan, which includes the conception of Brahman and Paramatma. And this is his personal potency. See, you always require the potency to reveal the potent. Bhaktivinoda writes that elsewhere. Nirvishesha Savishesh Shakti Tahate Nitya Vardhaman Thakileo. Though he possesses both impersonal and personal potencies, Savishesh Shaktir Boladikya Rekha Jai. We notice that his personal potency is stronger, Jatha, as stated in still the personal potencies of his dominant. As stated in the Shvetashvatar Upanishad, Prasya Shakti Vidhaiva Shuyate Swabhavik Jnana Valakriyacha. The Supreme Lord has multi-potencies which act so perfectly that all consciousness, strength, and activity are being directed solely by his will. The spiritual potencies known as Sandhini, Samvit, and Hladini, the Lord's potencies of eternal existence, cognizance, and bliss are known by the pure devotees. So the idea is that there's only one Supreme Being. There are no three Supreme Beings. There is no Brahman God, Paramatma God, Bhagavan God. There's only one God. He is Bhagavan. When he is partially perceived, when he is partially realized, the content of such partial realization is referred to as Paramatma. When he is vaguely realized, the content of that vague realization is known as Brahman. About the third reality, the Amnaya says that the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna is full of spiritual rasas or mellows. By the power of that rasa, both the spiritual and material worlds become maddened. That is the constitutional nature of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Lord Krishna has said, I am the source of Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Due to the power of that supreme rasa, there are unlimited varieties in both spiritual and material worlds. The rasa in the spiritual world is pure. The rasa of this material world is shadow. It's shadow. It's the shadow of the spiritual rasa. Again, by the Lord's inconceivable potency, The unlimited rasas of the spiritual world have been manifested in the Vrindavan pastimes of this world. The pure spirit soul is eligible for spiritual rasa. The pure spirit soul is eligible for experiencing spiritual rasa. To attain that supreme rasa is the living entity's dharma or duty. The living entity attains that on the strength of his devotional service. Attaining the supreme Brahman is attaining the supreme Brahman that is devoid of rasa or drive is never to be strived for. There is no manifestation of rasa in the realization of Paramatma. Only devotional service to Krishna is full of rasa. There is a distinction between Paramatma and Bhagavan in terms of the Lord's relationship, functioning relationship. Paramatma is Upadrashta Hanumantacha Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara Paramatma iti chapyukto dehesmin purusha paraha. The Paramatma, he monitors the karmic activities and reactions and so on. Maya Devi functions because of Paramatma's supervision. There are three Paramatmas. Vishnustu Trini Rupani Purushakshyam Yato Vidu. There is Karanodakshaya Vishnu, Bodhakshaya Vishnu, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. These are three Paramatmas. But devotional service to Krishna, Krishna's plenary portions in the Vaikuntha universe, that is full of rasa. Specifically, devotional service to Krishna in Prema Bhakti, that is filled with the Prema Bhakti rasa. While considering the fourth reality, the Amnaya says that the living entities are minute particles of the spiritual sun, Krishna, and they are innumerable. As the spiritual world is manifested by Krishna's chitta of spiritual potency, and as the material world is manifested by the inferior illusory energy, similarly, the living entities are manifested by a portion of the spiritual energy. Krishna's spiritual form has all qualities in full, and those qualities are naturally present in the living entities in minute quantity. The independent nature of Krishna is found insignificantly in the living entities. For this reason, the living entities claim to be independent. As a result, all living entities have developed different propensities. By one propensity, the living entity searches for his own happiness, and by another propensity, he searches for Krishna's happiness. Thus, living entities are divided into two groups: those searching for their own happiness and those searching for Krishna's happiness. Those who search for Krishna's happiness are called Nitya Mukta, and those who search for their own happiness are called Nitya Baddha. In this regard, all inconceivable natures are under the subordination of spiritual time. The time factor of the spiritual nature is a state of eternal present. But in the inferior illusory energy, there are three states of existence: past, present, and future. So whatever considerations arise in this regard, if related with the spiritual time factor, then no doubts will remain. But if seen otherwise, then doubts will remain. Why did the pure soul search for his own happiness? If one puts forward such a question, then doubts arising from the material time factor will manifest. If one can give up such doubts, then he can perform devotional service. Otherwise, there will only be a series of arguments. If arguments are related to the inconceivable nature, then anarthas arise. So the fourth is about the nature of the Jivatma. Fifth, the teachings of Amnaya regarding the fifth reality is this: the living entities who are searching for their own happiness accept Maya, who is situated nearby, and thus enjoy happiness and distress under the grip of material time. Karma is nothing but a blind wheel created by Maya. Those who have not contacted Maya have no connection with karma. The living entities who are searching for their own pleasure receive from the wheel of Maya gross and subtle bodies as a means to enjoy. This blind wheel is found in unlimited forms, but just as it was easy for the living entity to enter, it will be easy to leave at the time of liberation. The living entities who are under the blind wheel of Maya are called Nitya Baddha. In this regard, the word Nitya is applied in regard to material time. When by the touch of spiritual substance, the spiritual time factor is awakened, then their conditioned nature is seen as temporary. By the mercy of sadhus, Mahajanas, and Krishna, and by the strength of many lifetimes of wise activities in devotion service, the conditioned soul achieves spaciousness. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, Onobhagye Karo Samsar Chayonmukh hoy, Sadhu Sange Tabe Krishne Rati Upajoy. By good fortune, one becomes eligible to cross the ocean of nescience, and when one's term of material existence decreases, one may get an opportunity to associate with pure devotees. Nothing is happening by fluke. One gets an opportunity to associate with pure devotees when one's term of material existence decreases. Bhavapavargo brahmato yada bhave janasya tarhyachyuta satsamagamaha satsangamo yarhi tadaiva sadgato paravareshe tvajayate matihi. By such association, one's attraction to Krishna is awakened. Okay, this is the Bhagavatam verse. Oh my Lord, O infallible Supreme Person, when a person wandering throughout the universes becomes eligible for liberation from material existence, he gets an opportunity to associate with devotees. When he associates with devotees, his attraction for you is awakened. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the highest goal of the topmost devotees and the Lord of the universe. So that's what that is. Okay. By the association of sadhus, material distress is vanquished. By the mercy of Krishna, one attains firm faith. Then by the strength of his devotion service and Krishna's mercy, a living entity cuts the bondage of Maya and attains Krishna's service. By the mercy of Krishna, the Bhattamukta Jivas, those who achieve freedom from bondage easily attain Salokya, the abode of Krishna, with those who have never entered into Maya because of searching for Krishna's happiness. So this is 5, so this is 6. All of this is 6. No, here, 6 is here. The conclusion of Nāmāśraya regarding the 6th reality is this. Lord Krishna and all other things are connected by a relationship of achintya bheda bhed, inconceivably, simultaneously, one and different. That is why the Vedas have many statements supporting oneness and many statements supporting difference. In the conclusions of those ignorant of the truth, only a portion of the Vedas are accepted. In the conclusions of the knowers of the truth, the purport of all the Vedas is accepted. Those who have a thirst for worshipping the Lord learn from the teachings of Nāmāśraya that Lord Krishna is all-pervading and one without a second. Shri Krishna is the absolute truth. That absolute truth possesses all energies. Although the living entities and the material world are manifested by his energies, still he remains without a second. The ingredients are constitutionally non-different from Krishna. But in the material creation, everything other than Krishna is a transformation of his energy and therefore eternally separate from him. This eternal oneness and difference is naturally inconceivable because it is beyond the range of the living entity's material intelligence. If the nature of the living entity itself is inconceivable, and if the nature of Krishna is also inconceivable, nature of the relationship between Krishna and the living entity is also inconceivable. By the way, the actual nature of the material world is also inconceivable with the living entities. It is noted by the Vaishnava Acharyas in their commentaries to the Vedanta Sutra. So, if the particular entities are inconceivable, the relationships between them are also inconceivable. Inconceivable doesn't mean that you can't understand anything out of it. It means you cannot completely understand it. Because it is beyond the range of the living entity's material intelligence. When the living entity's spiritual intelligence is awakened, pure knowledge of the inconceivable oneness and difference is aroused, keeping firm faith in the statements of Nāmāśraya. By the mercy of Krishna, the devotees can clearly see the truth of the inconceivable oneness and difference. If we use material consideration to understand this, it becomes theoretical. When one achieves knowledge of these 7 realities, through self-realization by the strength of Amnan, then it may be said that one has Sambandha Jnana, knowledge of one's relationship with the Lord. In reply to Srila Sanatana Goswami's question, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has elaborately spoken on the signs of one's relationships with the Lord. As given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ke ami, kene amai jare tapat troy, ihanahi jani kemone hito hoy. Who am I? Why do the threefold miseries always give me trouble? If I do not know this, how can I be benefited? Those persons who want the greatest benefit in the form of achieving devotion to Krishna should all ask these questions to their spiritual master. By hearing the proper answers to these questions from the mouth of one's guru, all one's doubts will be cleared and firm faith will awaken. Do not give up deliberation as useless. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Siddhanta boliya chitte na karo alas, iha hoite Krishna lage sudridho manos. The sincere student should not neglect the discussion of such conclusions, considering them controversial. For such discussions, strengthen the mind. Thus one's mind becomes attached to Krishna. Okay. Now see, among 10 realities, the first 8 are related with the authority and one's relationship with the Lord. One will receive all information from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's answer to Sanatana Goswami. Okay, wait, now it's a good time for me to read out to you Bhaktivinoda Thakur's own Sanskrit verses which discuss each of these. Okay. I had already read out the verses, the summary verse and the verse about acceptance of Vedic authority, that is Dashamol 0, or summary of Dashamol, and then Dashamol 1. Now I'll read Dashamol number 2, from 2 to 8. Parakhyaya shakte rabhrithagapis sasve mahimani sthito jiva hyam swam achit abhihitam tam tripadikam swatantrechha shaktim sakala vishaye prerana paro vikaradhyai shunyah paramapurusho sau vijayate. The Supreme Lord is non-different and inseparable from his inconceivable absolute potencies, and yet he is totally independent. He eternally embodies unlimited majestic grandeur. He always inspires his divine potencies, known as the Parashakti, consisting of the Jiva Shakti, the marginal potency, the Chit Shakti, the internal spiritual potency, and the Maya Shakti, the external illusory potency, to engage in worthwhile activities. So there are 3 potencies. Yet he, the highest absolute truth, eternally existent with full divinity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, remains unaffected and unchanged. Okay, there's one more. Here. This is Dashamol 4. Savai Hladinyaascha Pranayavitvater Hladana Ratas Tatha Samvikshakti Prakatitaraho Bhava Rasita Taya Shri Sandhinya Krita Vishata Tadhama Nichaye Prasambho Dhau Magno Vrajarasa Vilasi Vijayate. Swarup Shakti possesses 3 potencies, 3 properties: Hladini, Samvit, and Sandhini. Hladini. Okay. The transcendental loving exchanges created by the Hladini Shakti keep Sri Krishna captivated in bliss. The sublime amorous desires flowing out of the Samvit Shakti fan the erotic moods, rasa of Sri Krishna. The spiritual realm of Sri Vrindavan Dham, brilliant and pure, has been manifested by the Sandhini Shakti as the arena for the eternal loving pastimes. In Sri Vrindavan, the self-willed, the supreme lover of Braja, Sri Krishna remains immersed in the eternal nectar of rasa, the pastimes of divine loving mellows. So that covers the first 4 verses of Dashamula. The 5th verse of Dashamula is this. Sfulingaridhagner ivachit dhanavo jivanichaya hare suryasyeva pratagapitu tad bheda vishaya vashe maya yasya prakriti patere veshwaraiha sajivo muktopi prakriti vashayogyasva gunataha. Out of the flames of fire fall innumerable tiny sparks. Similarly, from the rays of the transcendental sun, Śrī Hari emanate millions of minute particles of consciousness. The infinitesimal spirit souls, the jivas. The jiva is not different from the Supreme Śrī Hari, and yet simultaneously he is distinct from Śrī Hari. The eternal difference between the Supreme Lord Śrī Hari and the jiva is that the Lord is always the master and controller of the Maya Shakti, whereas the jiva, even in his liberated state, by his very constitutional nature, is vulnerable to come under the sway of the Maya Shakti. You should remember that Bhaktivinoda has already stated that the jivas can be in one of 2 categories, Nitya Mukta or Nitya Baddha, but even when they are in the Nitya Mukta, even in their liberated condition, they're only either liberated condition or liberated state or conditioned state. Mukta Avastha, Baddha Avastha. So even in Mukta Avastha, Sajiva Mukto Pi Prakriti Vashayogya Swagunataha. He is capable of coming under material nature. Swagunataha. He is intrinsically capable of that. That is the Jivatma's Tatastha nature. So we go on. I think it's the next chapter, yes. Okay, here is the 6th verse of Dashamula. Swaruparthair hinan nijasukhavan Krishna vimukhan harer maya dandyan gunanigada jalai kalayati tatha sthulair lingair dvividha varanai kleshanikarai mahakarma lanair nayati patitan swarga nirayav. By his swarupa, eternal constitution, the jiva is the surrendered servitor of Shri Krishna and is meant to serve the Lord eternally. The conditioned souls who are alienated from their swarupa are wallowing in the illusion of false pride and material enjoyment. They have rejected Shri Krishna, hence they are being penalized by the Maya Shakti, who binds them with 3 chains in the form of the 3 material modes, namely Sattva, Raja, and Tamas, typing mistakes. Furthermore, she covers the swarupa of the jiva with the subtle body and then the gross body, thus imprisoning the jiva in the excruciating cycle of karmic reactions, which at times heaves him up to heaven or pushes him down to hell, Swarga or Niraya, Naraka. Okay. And there is one about, okay, then this is about the living entity who is fit to get out. Yata Brahmam Harirasa Galad Vaishnava Janam Kadachit Sampashyan Tad Anugamane Syat Ruchi Yutah Tada Krishna Vritya Tyajyati Shanakair Maika Dasham Swarupam Vibhrano Vimala Rasabhogam Satkurute. The conditioned jiva travels high and low throughout the material universe, from one species of life to another. When he associates with the Vaishnava saint who is saturated in the flowing rasa of devotion to Śrī Hari, he gradually develops ruchi, taste for serving the Lord and following the Vaishnava way of life. By chanting Krishna Nam, the jiva becomes purified of his material contamination. Thus his swarup begins to manifest more and more, and he gradually attains eligibility to relish the nectarian rasa of Shuddha Bhakti to Śrī Krishna. Then the next verse is about the oneness and difference, inconceivable oneness and difference. Hare Shakte Sarvam Chita Chida Akhilam Syat Parinate Vivartam no Satyam Shrutimata Viruddham Kalimalam Harer Bheda Bhedo Shruti Vihita Tattvam Suvimalam Tatah Premana Siddhir Bhavati Nitya Vishaye. In their entirety, the material and spiritual worlds are the transformations of the energies of Shri Krishna. Vivartavada, the impersonal theory of illusory transformation of Brahman, is false. It is a noxious pollution of Kali Yuga and contrary to the conclusions of the Vedas. the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, inconceivable simultaneous oneness and difference, is the true, pure essence of the Vedic truth. The practice of this philosophy elevates a person to the perfection of developing divine transcendental love for the eternal absolute truth, Sri Krishna. So these are the first eight verses of Dashamul, the 10 foundational teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Regarding authority, authority means source of valid knowledge, pramana. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's statement is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Veda Shastra kahe sambandha avideya prayojan Krishna prapya sambandha bhakti pratyar sadhan. The Vedic literatures give information about the living entity's eternal relationship with Krishna, which is called sambandha. The living entity's understanding of this relationship and his acting accordingly is called abhideya. Returning home back to Godhead is the ultimate goal of life and is called prayojan. So this is the first Dashamul. Then regarding the second Dashamul, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishneya Swarupa Vichar Shuno Sanatan Advai Jnana Tattva Braje Brajendra Nandan Swayam Bhagavan Krishna Govinda Paranam Sarveshwariya Purna Jar Golok Nitya Dham Jnana Jog Bhakti Teen Sadhaner Vashe Brahma Atma Bhagavan Tribhita Prakashe. O Sanatan, please hear about the eternal form of Lord Krishna. He is the absolute truth, devoid of duality, but present in Vrindavan as the son of Nanda Maharaj. The original Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna. His original name is Govinda. He is full of all opulences and his eternal abode is known as Goloka Vrindavan. There are three kinds of spiritual processes for understanding the absolute truth. The processes of speculative knowledge, mystic yoga, and bhakti yoga. According to, that means Jnana yoga, Ashtanga yoga, and bhakti yoga. Karma yoga is just a preliminary purification. According to these three processes, the absolute truth is manifested as Brahman, Paramatma, or Dharma. One should remember that Karma yoga, Jnana yoga, Ashtanga yoga, bhakti yoga, all of them are different types of Krishna consciousness. Karma predominant Krishna consciousness is Karma yoga. Jnana predominant Krishna consciousness is Jnana yoga. Ashtanga predominant Krishna consciousness is Ashtanga yoga. But Bhakti predominant Krishna consciousness is Bhakti yoga. When we spend, and it is calculated in terms of time, according to Baladev Vidyabhushan, he points out that the Parinishtitas spend very little time in the activities of the Varnashrama system. In terms of time, he says. So that is the consideration of time. Whichever pradhanyata vyapadesha bhavanti, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains, whichever is more predominant, that gets that name. Because one engages in a combination of various activities. Bhakti is predominant. You give most of your time for bhakti. Bhakti means Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakshim, Atmani. Then that combination is called Bhakti Yoga. When the activities of the Ashtanga Yoga system get most of the time, then the entire combination is called Ashtanga Yoga. Same way, when the activities of the Jnana system get most of the time, the combination is called Jnana Yoga. When most of the time goes in carrying out one's material duties, the combination gets the name Karma Yoga. So when one engages in Jnana Yoga, then the Supreme Lord Krishna manifests himself as the impersonal Brahman to such a person. When one engages in Ashtanga Yoga, he manifests himself as Paramatma. When one engages in Bhakti Yoga, he manifests himself as Bhagavan. Regarding Krishna's energy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishneya Swabhavik Teen Shakti Parinati Chit Shakti, Jiv Shakti, Ar Maya Shakti. Lord Krishna naturally has three energetic transformations, and these are known as the spiritual potency, the living entity potency, and the illusory potency. Krishna is full of rasa. That was the second Dashamul. No, that's the third Dashamul. This is the fourth one that's coming now. Krishna is full of rasa. As explained by Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarvayadi Sarvayam Shi Ishwar Shekhar Chidananda Deha Sarvashraya Sarveshwar. Krishna is the original source of everything and the sum total of everything. He appears as a supreme youth and his whole body is composed of spiritual bliss. He is the shelter of everything and master of everyone. There are further verses. For each of these 10 topics of Dashamurti, you can find plenty of evidence from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Regarding the constitutional nature of the living entity, the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regarding the constitutional position of the living entity is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jiver Swarup Hai Krishner Nitya Das, Krishner Tatastha Shakti, Bheda Bheda Prakash, Suryangsha Kiranjaishya Agnijwala Choy, Swabhavik Krishner Teen Prakar Shakti Hai. It is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna because he is the marginal energy of Krishna and a manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. Like a molecular particle of sunshine or fire, Krishna has 3 varieties of energy. That makes it clear, the position of the living entity. Then the next Dashamul is about the conditioned living entities, Baddha Jivas. Regarding conditioned living entities, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the following description in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Say Vivin Namsha Jeev Duito Prakar Ek Nitya Mukta Ek Nitya Samsar Krishna Bhuli Sei Jeev Anadi Bhuli Mukh Auto Eva Maya Tare De Samsar Tuk. The living entities Jivas are divided into 2 categories. Some are eternally liberated and others are eternally conditioned. Forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy Maya gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. Regarding the Mukta Jivas, concerning the liberated living entities, the Lord says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Mukta Nitya Krishna Charane Unmukh Krishna Parishad Naam Bhunje Seva Sukh. Those who are eternally liberated are always awake to Krishna consciousness. And they render transcendental loving service at the feet of Lord Krishna. They are to be considered eternal associates of Krishna, and they are eternally enjoying the transcendental bliss of serving Krishna. About Achintya Bheda Bheda, that is one Dashamul. Regarding simultaneous oneness and difference, the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Krishna Tatastha Shakti Bheda Bhed Prakash. The living entity is the marginal energy of Krishna and manifestation simultaneously one and different from the Lord. When the living entity's relationship with the Lord is revived by the association of Amnaya, Vedic knowledge received through disciplic succession, then Abhideya is understood. Devotional service to Sri Krishna is that Abhideya. The means, the purpose is that whatever the scriptures specify as one's prime duty is called Abhideya. In this regard, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Bhakti Hoy Abhideya Pradhan Bhakti Mukha Nirikshak Karma Yoga Gyan Ei Sab Sadhaner Atituksha Val Krishna Bhakti Vinataha Ditenare Val. Devotional service to Krishna is the chief function of the living entity. There are different methods for the liberation of the conditioned soul, karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti, but all are dependent on bhakti. Without devotional service, bhakti, all other methods for spiritual self-realization are weak and insignificant. Unless one comes to the devotional service of Lord Krishna, jnana and yoga cannot give the desired results. The idea is this. There is something called karma phal, jnana phal, yoga phal, and bhakti phal. Phal means result. The result of karma can be just ordinary, enhanced sense enjoyment in the next life. That's one. That's called bhakti. Or it can be hrid vishuddhi, purification of the heart from lust, anger, and greed. Coming to the more of goodness. Then there is jnana. The result of jnana is realization of the impersonal Brahman feature of the Lord. That's jnana phala. Nirvishesha brahmopalapti. Yoga phala, the result of the yoga system, Ashtanga yoga system, is realization of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Lord. Paramatma Upalabdhi. Then there is Bhakti Bhava, the result of Bhakti. The result of Bhakti is Bhakti itself. Sadhana Bhakti leads to Bhava Bhakti, which leads to Prema Bhakti. Each of the higher process can grant the results that one seeks to attain through a lower process. Take for instance even karma. Lower than karma is anyabhilashita or adharma. Through adharma, what can we get? You can only get happiness in this life. You engage in sinful activities, you'll be happy in this life only. Next life you'll have to suffer. Next life or lives you'll have to suffer. But this life you can be happy. But that also you get if you follow Varnashrama Dharma. You also get some happiness in this life. It's not that that's denied. But you get much more significant benefit in your next life, and therefore the Paratrika Bhukti or the material enjoyment that you get in your next life, that is something that you cannot get through sinful activities or adharma or anyabhilashita. But through jnana, one can attain even impersonal liberation. But through jnana, you can also attain Paratrika Bhukti, material happiness in one's next life. One can also get happiness in this life. Similarly, yoga, the activities of the yoga system, they can take you up to Paramatma realization, but it can give you something lower than that. It can give you the lower results also. Similarly, when one engages in bhakti, one can attain the lower results also simply through bhakti. But when one engages in karma, Varnashrama Dharma, in order to attain the result of Varnashrama Dharma, which could be, if you are Rajasic, then you will want material happiness in your next life, enhanced material happiness in next life. If you are Sattvic, then you will want purification of heart from the various anarthas, lust, anger, greed, and so on. But in either case, simply engaging in the activity of Varnashrama Dharma will not do. One also has to engage in the activities of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmaniveda. Similarly, when one engages in activities of the jnana system to attain impersonal realization, to attain impersonal liberation, you must also engage in the activities of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. Otherwise, you cannot get the result of jnana. And one cannot get the result of karma, any of the two results, unless he engages in the activities of bhakti also. Similarly, for Ashtanga Yoga also, you must also engage in one or more of these activities of Navavida Bhakti. Whenever we say engage in Navavida Bhakti, it's understood you can engage in one or you can engage in more than one, or. That choice is always there. So one can only get jnana phala, the result of jnana, by engaging in jnana, provided you mix in bhakti, which means regularly one must engage in the activities of Navavida Bhakti also. So that is always there. That is why it is said, Bhakti Mukha Nirikshaka Karma Yoga Jnana. Literally, Karma, Yoga, Jnana are always looking at Bhakti, which means that they are depending on Bhakti, which means that along with that activity, you must engage in the activity of Bhakti also. Only then you will get the result of that particular process. Sadhana Bhakti is called Abhidaya. That sadhana bhakti is divided into two, Vaidhi and Raganuga. Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is of many varieties. In some places, 64 limbs are given, and in some places, 9 limbs are given. The preaching of 9-fold devotion service is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmaniveda. Hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu. Remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering praise to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord one's best friend and surrendering everything unto him. In other words, serving him with body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. The rest of the translation is actually translation of the verse that comes immediately after that. They come together. When a conditioned living entity engages his mind at the lotus feet of Krishna, with his mind, body, and words, that is called bhakti. Let me trace out the original. Buddha Jeev Khai Manovatye Shri Krishna Tarane Je Manonivesh Pare Ahare Nam Bhakti. When one engages one's body, mind, and speech in at the lotus feet of Shri Krishna, in such a manner that his mind is absorbed in Krishna, then that activity is called bhakti. Did you notice that? It is not simply engaging in different activities connected to Krishna. You engage in those activities in such a manner that your mind becomes absorbed in Krishna. Tasmat kena pipayena mana Krishne niveshayet. Bhagavatam 7th canto again. One's mind should be focused on Krishna. And for that, Śrī Rupa Goswami has given 64 items in Namasraya Sindhu, which have been enlisted in the Nectar of Devotion, which have also been enlisted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, teachings of Lord Chaitanya also. The first 20 are important, the last 5 are important. These are essential, you cannot get out of it. The last 5 are very important, but the first 20 is absolutely required. You cannot get out of that. They are preliminary, in fact, they're preliminary. So the entire process is that. It is not simply engaging in some activity and I'm calling it bhakti, because then the result of bhakti will not come. And you cannot say the result of bhakti will come after I die. It's foolishness. That means bhakti is weaker than yoga or jnana or even karma. When you do like this, then that such performance is what is called bhakti. The differences in bhakti from karma and jnana are very subtle. Many times the limbs of bhakti and karma appear similar. When those limbs are connected with separate desires, they turn into limbs of karma. When those limbs are connected with right thoughts of Brahman, they turn into limbs of jnana. In some limbs, that is neither karma or jnana involved. The fruits of karma that lead one to the service of Krishna alone are called limbs of bhakti. The fruits of karma that lead one to his own enjoyment are called karma. The karma that leads one to merge with the Lord is called impersonal jnana. Therefore, Śrīla Rupa Goswami has given the symptoms of bhakti in the Namasraya-bhakti Sindhu as follows. Anya vilashita shunyam, jnana karma janavritam, anukulyena krishnanu, shilanam bhakti ruttama. When first-class devotion service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monastic philosophy, and fruitive action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. To perform the limbs of devotional service according to the dictation of vidhi or prescribed rules is called Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. The service performed out of spontaneous attachment to Krishna is called Raga Bhakti. The activities of Sadhana Bhakti remain the same. But when those activities are engaged out of spontaneous attachment to Krishna, then that is called Ragamuga Sadhana Bhakti. So you have Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti or Ragamuga Sadhana Bhakti. It's practically the same as Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. The devotion of the Vrajavasis here referred to residents of Goloka Vrindavan, is called Ragatmika Prema Bhakti. That is a Ragatmika Prema Bhakti. Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is not the same as Ragatmika Prema Bhakti. And imitation of that devotion service is called Raganuga Bhakti. Imitation should not be understood in terms of simply doing whatever they're doing. Rather, it means it has a particular meaning. Let me explain it. There's something wrong with this. This is not properly typed. I'll have to trace it out. Seva. Seva sadhana rupena siddhi rupena chatrahi. Krishna Chakravarti Thakur has explained. It is not just blind imitation, it means following. For instance, there is a gradual development. Okay, it means that there is a gradual development of a desire to please Krishna the way the residents of Goloka Vrindavan please Krishna. But externally, with one's physical body, one has a desire to engage in devotional service to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the way Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates served him. So it is not that residents of Goloka Vrindavan don't follow Ekadashi, so I will also not follow Ekadashi in the name of Raga-bhakti. No. Because that is an external activity. The associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they followed Ekadashi. The same associates in Goloka Vrindavan have other particular forms, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Goloka Vrindavan is in the form of Radha Krishna. So there it's different, and when the Lord manifests here, it's different. So externally one follows the rules and regulations of Vaidhi Sadhana, of Sadhana Bhakti, which is, for Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is practically the same as Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Details are found elsewhere. But the distinction between these two is what is the motive. When both of them are based on knowledge, but there's something more than knowledge involved. In Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, one has attained a spiritual greed to do whatever is needed in order to go to Goloka Vrindavan, in order to serve and please Krishna and Krishna's associates. And greed, the greater one's greed is, the lesser one's material desires are. So there's no, if I'm suffering from the 6 urges, there's no question of spiritual greed, because when there is spiritual greed, then this will go down. You cannot have both. When one goes up, the other goes down. Raganuga Bhakti is something that we will see in, if you examine Vidvan, you'll get an idea about what it is. Vaidhi Bhakti starts from Shraddha and proceeds up to Rati when it becomes one with Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti is always forceful. This is the 9th principle. Through, okay, let me see if I can trace it. Let me get another one. Here, Aishwarya Jnani Vidhi Bhajan Koriya Vaikuntha ki Jai Chaturvidha Mukti Paya. By performing such regulated devotion service and on veneration, one may go to Vaikuntha and attain the 4 kinds of liberation. So this is the result of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is one track. Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti is another track. But when one does not have that greed, then you have to engage in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. There is no other way. But when one attains that greed, then he switches track. So there is Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Vaidana Kriya, absolutely in both tracks. But one takes you to the 4 types of liberation found in Vaikuntha. The other takes you to Goloka Vrindavan. So when you come to a certain point, whichever level, and then you attain that greed, then you switch track. Go. Okay. According to the statements of Amnaya, the 10th principle is that Prema is the Prayojan, or supreme goal. The stages from Sadhana Bhakti up to the attainment of Prema are described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Śrī Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as follows. Kono bhagye kono jive shraddha jodi hoy, Abhay say Jeev Sadhu Sangaje Karoy. If by good fortune a living entity develops faith in Krishna, he begins to associate with devotees. Sadhu Sangha hoite hoy Shravan Kirtan. Sadhan Bhakti hoy Sarva Nartha Nivartan. When one is encouraged in devotional service by the association of devotees, one becomes free from all unwanted contamination by following the regulative principles and chanting and hearing. Anartha Nibritti hoire Bhakti Nishtha. Nishtha hoite Shravanadde Ruchi Upadeśāmṛta. When one is free from all unwanted contamination, he advances with firm faith. When firm faith in devotional service awakens, a taste for hearing and chanting also awakens. Ruchi hoite bhakti hoy asakti prochur. Asakti hoite chitte jame Krishne pradityanku. After taste is awakened, deep attachment arises, and from that attachment, the seed of love for Krishna grows in the heart. The seed of love for Krishna refers to bhava bhakti. Say bhav gad hoile dhare prem naam. Say prema prayojan sarvananda dham. When that ecstatic emotional stage intensifies, it is called love of God. Such love is life's ultimate goal and the reservoir of all pleasure. Those who have doubts in these 10 principle teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are not qualified for devotional service. Okay, let me now take out those Dashamud verses. This is okay, that's one verse on a big. Here. Shruti Krishna Kyanam Smarananati Puja Vidhina Tathadasyam Sakyam Paricharanam Apyatma Dadanam Navanganyetaniha Vidhigata Bhakte Ramudinam Bhajan Shraddha Yukta Suvimaratim Vaisalabhate. One attains pure love and attachment for the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna by daily and faithfully executing the process of regulated devotional service, which consists of the following 9 limbs: hearing the glories of the Lord, chanting the glories of the Lord, remembering the Lord, serving his lotus feet, worshipping the Lord, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming a servitor of the Lord, considering the Lord one's friend, and surrendering oneself completely to the Lord. And, one more verse. This is complex. Let me see. 50,000 times. Let's come a little later. Swarupavasthane madhurarasa bhavo daya iha Vaje Radha Krishna Swajana Jana Bhavam Hridivaha Paranande Pritim Jagadatul Sampat Sukhamatho Vilasakhe Tatve Paramaparicharyam Salabhate. The Jiva attains his Swarup when his sadhana bhakti matures. At this stage, the Hladini Shakti endows him with bhava in Madhura Rasa, honey-like nectarian mellows, as he aspires to become a servant of one of the eternal associates of Shri Radha Krishna and Braja. It's an Upalakshana, it's an indication. One may also desire to attain Krishna's lotus feet as a servant in Vatsalya Rasa or in Sakhya Rasa and so on. And correspondingly, he will be sheltered by a particular eternal associate in that rasa. Even whilst in this world, he is employed in the unalloyed service of the supreme embodiment of sublime bliss and experiences ineffable exaltation. To attain this transcendental treasure is of unsurpassable value for the Jiva. So these are the 10 root teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Those who have doubts in these 10 principal teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are not qualified for devotion service. When doubts arise, once devotion service becomes corrupted, these are polluted, unwanted results are achieved, and thus everything is ruined. Therefore, those who have a desire for pure devotion service should perform devotion service with firm confidence. There are different types of anarthas. And there is one anartha which is tattva vibhram, to have philosophical confusion, to be confused about the teachings of the Lord. Okay, let me just note down. Okay. Any questions? What will be the effect of a person who has realized Paramatma? Does he attain any of the 5 types of liberation and live in Vaikuntha planets? Bhagavad Gita with the commentaries of Vishnu Chakravarti and Baladev Bhushan. I do remember reading Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur talking about those who worship Paramatma. What happens to them? See, here he says. See, there is this verse. Tammeva Sharanam. This is 18.62. When Lord Krishna says, surrender unto him utterly. He's talking of surrender unto the super soul utterly. Tammeva Sharanam Gacha Sarva Bhavena Bharat. Prasadat Param Shantim Sthanam Prachesi Shashvatam. It is this. Close to the wall. $62 actually. Okay. So sign of Bharata, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace, you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. So Shri Vishnu Chakravarti says, Eta Jnana Prayojanamaha. Having realized the super soul, after having understood and realized the super soul, am I sharing this or is it not shared? I'm sorry, I should share. Here it is. So this knowledge of Paramatma, knowledge, understanding, realization, what is the result of that? The result of that is this, that one can attain that supreme abode by his mercy. Param, avidya vidya yor nirvirtim. One attains a cessation of both avidya and vidya. Sattvic knowledge and rajasic, tamasic ignorance. Tatash shashvatam sthanam vaikuntha. Then one attains the eternal abode, which is vaikuntha. Iyam antaryami sharanapatir antaryami upasakhanam eva. This surrender, this is the result of this surrender unto the super soul is for those who worship the super soul. Those who worship the super soul refer to those who engage in processes by which they can realize the super soul. Bhagavad upasakhanam to bhagavad sharanapatir agre vakshyate eva iti kechitaho. So some authorities say that worshippers of Bhagavan, they should surrender unto Bhagavan, which will be stated here a little later. So from this it is, we get the idea that at least those who worship the super soul with the desire to attain eternal service to the super soul in Vaikuntha, they would attain Vaikuntha, but it appears that they would experience the 4 forms of personal liberation. Because in Prema Bhakti, the question of rasa comes, and Prema Bhakti is only towards Bhagavan, whether it is Krishna or Krishna's expansion, Narayana in the spiritual world. Bhagavan is the Lord's form in the spiritual world. Paramatma is the Lord's form in the material world. There are also those who worship Paramatma in order to merge into Paramatma. That's called Ishvara Sayujya. There are 2 types of Sayujya. There is Brahma Sayujya and Ishvara Sayujya. That also comes. Here. Brahma Ishvara Sayujya Dvaita Prakar. There are 2 kinds of Sayujya Mukti, merging into the Brahman effulgence, merging into the personal body of the Lord. So that's also there. Hare Krishna pranams. How many types of anarthas are there? The process to uproot them out. The process to uproot them out is to carry out the instructions of Rupa Goswami. He tells you what not to do, tells you what to do. That's the process. How many types of anarthas are there? That comes in Bhajan Rahasya. We will look at that later. I was reading Gita 4th chapter. Prabhupada was writing in the purport, Krishna gave Gita knowledge in Treta Yuga. So my question is, why not in Satya Yuga? In Satya Yuga, people were in the mode of goodness. They already had knowledge about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When things become contaminated in Treta Yuga, then the Lord has to revive it. The teachings of Bhagavad Gita is a summary of it's the essential teaching of the Pancharatric scriptures, which teach Vaishnavism, that you surrender unto the Supreme Lord. Why are the jivas penalized for having vague understanding? Wouldn't be any understanding as good understanding? Well, those who have attained impersonal realization, they are freed from the punishments of Maya. They are not penalized. They are not penalized. They are not beaten by Maya. They just attain impersonal liberation. But they don't attain the full thing. Prem goes from the Prabhu. Wait. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Guruji. Prabhuji, you mentioned what is the exact meaning of Amnaya?
Amnaya means Vedic knowledge coming through the disciplined succession of perfect saintly authorities.
Coming through
the parampara.
Coming through parampara. Bona fide parampara, is it?
Yeah.
And the other question I had is, you read one verse in which it was said
Of course, yeah, still have not been added to the telegraphy. What is the problem here? Did you apply for the codes properly? Then you would have been added. I'll talk to them. But if you applied for the course, then you just have to say, I applied on such and such a day. This is my legal name, this, that, and all that.
Sorry, one more question. In one of the verses, it was mentioned 64 limbs of bhakti and 9 limbs as per Bhagavatam. So my question is that if
limbs.
Yeah, limbs only. I said limbs. So my question is that, I mean, just maybe it's a hypothetical question. You can say, if a person is, let's say, totally unaware of the 64 limbs of bhakti, but he's fully aware of the 9 limbs of bhakti, and he follows those only.
No, 64. That 9 itself was further broken up into the 64.
Okay, so the 9 is equal to
same thing.
Okay.
The 64 is much more detailed, and in Haribhakti Vilas it's even more. It's just Rupa Goswami, out of his kindness, has selected certain prime activities of Haribhakti and put it out. So, and also he has put it out in terms of body, in terms of mind, in terms of speech. Chatushashti Upasana. These are 64 different ways to meditate on the Supreme Lord. How to become non-envious with devotees who are staying with us. We should first of all chant Hare Krishna increasingly. So, and we should pray to Krishna for help, so that we don't become jealous of others, we don't become hostile to others. We are not supposed to be even hostile to non-devotees. Grina, hatred, has no place in Krishna consciousness at all, actually. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that in his commentary to Śrī Upadeśāmṛta. Hatred has no place in spiritual life. That is why even in that verse, Ishwareta Tathineshu Balisheshu Bishatsucha Prema Maitri Kripa Upeksha, you neglect demoniac non-devotees. You don't hate them. You don't think you should take a gun and kill them and all. What is all? Maya will take care of all these people. Not our business. So malice or jealousy does not actually have a place. But if for some reason or another you cannot get along with some other devotee, it is best that when we are in situations like that, it is best to just keep away. It's just best to keep away and pray to Krishna for help and engage in the various activities of devotional service with an attitude to please Krishna and Krishna's dear ones. And just keep away. Because sometimes you may come across, sometimes we ourselves maybe in situations where there are strange combinations. I may engage in a very high exalted activity, and I may exhibit a very low base tamasic attitude. It's just that whole combination. It stinks. So, but at the same time, that person may be a nice devotee of Krishna. He may like to chant. He may like to serve Krishna. He may like to read Bhagavatam. He may like, it's just that the whole combination cannot get along, or there are also other things. Just as our gross body likes certain things and our gross body doesn't like certain things, our subtle body also likes certain things and our subtle body doesn't like certain things. So we should just be careful. Let us not, we are already in enough trouble. Let us not increase our troubles. Just keep away. There's no need to artificially try to do something. Just engage more in devotional service. We can study Krishna consciousness. We can try to share Krishna consciousness with the innocent non-devotees. There are so many ways you can keep yourself busy and away from those whose thinking, feeling, willing, acting is disturbing. But I have also noticed that when my chanting is better, my consciousness is better, my tolerance is also better. And when my chanting is poor, my consciousness is lower, my tolerance is also lower. So that's another thing. Leela Madhuri Lalita Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Pranam. Following to the question, your answer recent, just now you answered. From that, if Krishna is putting us in such a situation where we have to do some service, but it is, I know that that devotee doesn't like me for some reason, but I don't want to go and find out some reasons, but I have to do some services along with that devotee. I cannot avoid. So what should I do in that situation?
We should increase our chanting of Hare Krishna mantra and go on with the service until Krishna makes a change.
Okay. Fine. Okay, one more question. So during the class, you were talking about two things. I have two questions. One is when you were talking about do the devotional service, but your mind also should be absorbed. But it is a big challenge for me. Really, I cannot control my mind, even while chanting or even while doing some service, even while attending the class. I cannot concentrate sometimes. I know that my mind is controlling me, but I'm trying to do concentrate. But
for that is why
do?
Krishna has come in the form of the holy name. That is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knows very well all the miserable conditions that we will go through in Kali Yuga. Our bodies are not actually fit for engaging in the process of even sadhana bhakti the way it was engaged in the past. Till date, if you go to the Ramanuja followers, they will tell you, we are not engaging in Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means, Ramanujacharya explains, Avichinna Tailadharavat Bhagavad-anasmaranam. You continue, your mind is in continuous remembrance of Krishna, of the Supreme Lord, Bhagavan. Just as when you pour oil flows just in one stream. It doesn't flow, it doesn't break and flow. It just flows. Unbroken stream of oil. That is actually technically Bhakti Yoga. Most of us, our remembrance of Krishna, even though we know from day one, Smartavya Sasatam Vishnu, Vismartavya Najatachu. But the essence of sadhana bhakti is we should uninterruptedly remember Krishna and never forget him. We know that. But still we are attempting to do that. So, but in Bhakti Yoga, properly speaking, it is that uninterrupted remembrance of Krishna. That means your mind is focused on Krishna, even though one may be engaged in Shravanam, Kirtanam, or anything, the mind is engaged in Krishna fully, uninterruptedly. So that is proper Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, they say, the Ramanuja group, they say, no, we follow the Pancharatric scriptures, which teaches something called Sharanagati, which is an alternative for those who are incapable of engaging in Bhakti Yoga. So the Bhakti Yoga that they are talking of is the Bhakti Yoga that you engage in after you realize that you are not the body. That is the ancient pathway of coming to Bhakti Yoga. First you engage in Karma Yoga. And then you become renounced from family life and all these things. Then you, as a sannyasi, you engage in Jnana Yoga. Then you become fully self-realized. You realize you are not the subtle body, you are not the gross body. You realize you are an eternal servant of Lord Narayana. Then you engage in Bhakti Yoga, uninterrupted Bhakti Yoga. That stream of oil, like that. So they say that we are not engaged in Bhakti Yoga. We cannot what? We are Kali Yoga people. What? We cannot do things like that. But Sharanagati we can do. 6 items of Sharanagati. Then what they call Sharanagati turns out to be the same as what Bhagavatam calls Bhakti Yoga. What we call sadhana bhakti. At least our attempt to enter into sadhana bhakti. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu knows this very well, and therefore he has chosen out of all the different items of Bhakti Yoga, he has chosen one item. and made it into the Yuga Dharma. It is the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We need to increase the quality and quantity of this. And we need to attempt constantly to avoid offenses to the Holy Name, avoid sinful activities, avoid service, offenses in service to the deity. We focus on this. And take advantage of, and we should take advantage of those things which are especially underscored for Kali Yuga. Like for instance, Srimad Bhagavatam. Well, Bhagavatam is specifically for Kali Yuga. Worship, deity, even deity worship. The deity form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, specifically for Kali Yuga. So why not take advantage of that which is specifically meant for us in Kali Yuga? Then that will help. It will greatly help. Service to Navadip Mandal, for instance, specifically for Kali Yuga. So these are additional mercy, additional help. So it is our duty to move in that direction. We go up, we go down, we go up, we go down. But we also learn many lessons. Of course, when we engage in activities which downgrade us in Krishna consciousness, we go down and we forget what we have learned in the past. That is Maya's capacity. She can make us forget what we have learned in Krishna consciousness. We can do that. She can easily do that. Therefore, we need to be in the association of like-minded devotees who are more advanced than us. Of course, in such a manner that we don't contaminate them. That's another thing. Dham is very important. I have a tendency to stress Namakirtan, Bhagavad Shravan, Mathurava, Srimurti, Shrathai, Seven. These out of Panchanga Bhakti, these four are directly related to Krishna. Krishna's name, serving Krishna's name, serving Krishna's form, serving Krishna's qualities and pastimes. That's in Bhagavatam. And serving Krishna's abode is Dham. Mayapur, Vrindavan, Jagannath Puri, and like that, there are holy places. There are many holy places where Krishna himself is being there, not just pious holy places. These are spiritual holy places. It's our duty to take advantage of all of the help that Krishna is giving us. It's our duty to help in every possible manner. We should help in every possible manner. Then when the mind becomes subdued, it may not immediately fully become subdued, but it does, these are things which you have to learn on your own. When you learn swimming, when you jump into the water under training, you can't just stay in the ground and keep trying to learn about swimming. So when you enter into the process, then you also will understand that there are certain things if I do, things go out of control. There are certain things if I do, everything comes under control. So I must do those things by which things come under control. We get to understand that. Gradually we get to understand. And Krishna shows us the nature of the material world, shows us the nature of the spiritual world, shows us, he makes us understand the different grades of devotion service. Krishna helps. Krishna helps. We should take advantage of all that. All right. Anything else?
Can I ask one more question, Prabhu?
Okay.
What is the difference between Karma Mishra Bhakti and Bhakti Mishra Karma? Because we were also talking about karma predominated in Bhakti. So those terms. So just reminded me this question is there in me quite a long time. So if it is connected to the class,
if
could
I'm
you please
spending more
explain?
time in carrying out material duties, then that is Bhakti Mishra Karma. If I'm spending more time in my spiritual duties, it is Karma Mishra Bhakti.
So karma is less in Karma Mishra Bhakti.
Yeah. The earlier factor is always lesser.
Okay. So, can I ask one more question from Srimad Bhagavatam?
Is it connected with today's discussion?
No.
Okay, so then let's leave it aside for at least here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Otherwise, if you have further questions, we can discuss it in the Telegram group. All right. Om Shagal Putra Shri Pasandeebhyo Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.